Lesson 45 useOptimistic. 1. Introduction. Good morning everyone. Today we'll explore a powerful concept in React that enables a smoother and more responsive user experience, optimistic UI updates. We will focus on the hook known as useOptimistic. By the end of this session you will understand what it does, when and why you'd use it, and how it changes the feel of your applications. 2. What is useOptimistic? The useOptimistic hook is a mechanism that lets you present the user interface with a change immediately, before an asynchronous action, such as a network request, has completed. In other words, you can assume success, optimistically, and display the new state right away, rather than waiting for the server to respond. Under the hood it works by keeping a base state plus an optimistic version of the state when an action is pending. Until that action finishes, the UI shows the optimistic version. Once the action completes, and succeeds or fails, the state reconciles accordingly. 3. Why use it? The motivation. In many web applications, when a user triggers a change, for example submitting a message, liking a post or updating a profile, there's an inherent delay while the request travels to the server, is processed, and then the response comes back. During that time, the user might see nothing happening, which feels sluggish and unresponsive. By using useOptimistic, you can make the UI feel instantaneous. You update the view immediately as though the action has succeeded, while behind the scenes the actual request is being executed. This improves perceived performance and user satisfaction. In today's world where users expect apps to respond at lightning speed, this can be a significant UX advantage. 4. How it works conceptually. At its core, useOptimistic takes three elements: the current state value, an update function, sometimes called update FN, and a way to dispatch or trigger the optimistic update. The update function describes how to transition from the current state to the optimistic state given some optimistic value, for instance, the new message text, or the liked flag. When you call the dispatch of optimistic update, you pass that optimistic value, the hook computes the new optimistic state and the UI renders that. Meanwhile, the actual asynchronous action is kicked off. When the action resolves, you reconcile the base state, for example by replacing it with the actual server returned value, or roll back if needed. The important piece is that the user sees the update immediately, and the hook ensures state stays consistent. 5. Use cases and examples, in conceptual terms. Let's discuss scenarios where useOptimistic shines. Messaging. When a user sends a message, the message appears instantly in the conversation list, perhaps with a sending label. The actual server request is still in flight, but from the user's perspective the message was sent immediately. Once the server confirms receipt, the UI updates to the final state, removing the sending label, perhaps adding a timestamp. Liking, upvoting. When a user presses the like button, the like count and icon change immediately. Meanwhile, the API call happens. If the call fails, you might undo the increment or show an error. But the user didn't wait. Forms and edits. When editing a profile or settings, you might show the user the result of their change right away while saving occurs behind the scenes. This keeps the user in control and reduces waiting. The concept is that anytime you can reasonably assume success and you want immediacy, optimistic updates work well. However, you must also handle failure scenarios gracefully, rollback, error messaging. 6. Things to watch out for, best practices. While useOptimistic provides great responsiveness, there are several important considerations. Purity of update function. The function that computes the optimistic state must be pure. Given the current state and the optimistic value, it must produce the new state without side effects. This ensures predictability and avoids subtle bugs. Visual indication of pending state. Even though you update optimistically, it's good practice to show to the user that something is still pending. For example, a sending, label, spinner, or disabled button, so they understand the change is provisional. Failure and rollback. Some operations might fail due to network issues, server error, validation. You need to plan how the UI will handle those failures. Roll back the optimistic update, show error, retry logic, etc. Idempotence and duplication. If your optimistic update duplicates or shadows a real action, you must ensure reconciliation when the real result comes in. For instance, what happens if the server returns a different value? How do you merge that back safely? Use in moderation. Optimistic updates are best when the user is highly likely to succeed, e.g., toggling a like. For operations with high risk or complex side effects, a more conservative approach may be warranted, e.g., show loading spinner until server confirms. 7. Summary and when to adopt. The useOptimistic hook allows your user interface to leap ahead of actual data operations, showing the effect of user actions instantly. It improves perceived performance, keeps users engaged, and reduces latency friction. You should adopt it when you have operations where you can confidently assume success, when you want responsive UX, and when you can handle potential failures gracefully. On the other hand, if the operation is complex, uncertain, or requires heavy server round trips with variable outcomes, you might choose a more conservative strategy. 8. Closing. Thank you for your attention. I encourage you to reflect on your own applications. Where are the spots users wait for server responses? Where might optimistic updates make a real difference? In our next module, we will walk through examples and patterns of useOptimistic usage, compare it to conventional state handling, and explore how to integrate it into your overall UI architecture.